All right, when is altcoin season and are we too late for it? I'll start saying right off the bat that no, you haven't missed it. Don't be silly. Now, no one knows without, of course, a crystal ball what's going to happen to the market. So, anyone claiming that they have special technical analysis or some secret indicators are absolutely talking crap. This is why we don't trade and set our positions based on very different metrics and indicators than that of meme coin buyers or swing traders. It's just too risky. And there's simply too much value in the crypto world right now to take those chances. We can still make very huge returns in a way more intelligent way. Now, firstly, as I've said many times, making money is done when you buy and not when you sell. So it goes without saying that the earlier into your positions you find yourself, the better you are likely to do over the long haul. If you are waking up right now, though, and seeing crypto bubbles showing all kinds of pumps from various projects that you aren't in and you're feeling upset because you missed those pumps, or even if you were into some of those projects, you got in nice and extra early and you're starting to see the rewards of that, great. But in my opinion, at this stage, it's not too important in relation to where I think things are headed. Now, Bitcoin is the driver for markets. This is fact. Right now, we can see Bitcoin pumping, which is a great indicator. What is causing that Bitcoin pump? Well, as always, I'm going to summarize a great deal and try to make things as digestible for everyone as I can to streamline what I think you need to know. Now, in the past 2 weeks, when we take a look, 70% of new money into Bitcoin is all institutional money, pretty much coming from ETF positions. This is great and happens typically before the retail flood comes into play. Coinbase is, of course, a huge exchange that is certainly for most the go-to way to get into crypto, particularly for new investors, prior, of course, to them becoming more educated and aware of the beautiful world of DeFi and decentralized exchanges. Unlike other exchanges, Coinbase holds both retail and investor money, or institutional money, I should say, rather. When we take a look at Coinbase's volume by customer segmentation, we can plainly see, and this is plain to see on their website, that right now institutions are totally dominating with very little retail investor volume. Again, by comparison, we can also dig in a lot more and look at money raised for new projects, which again is very easy to find on a lot of free websites that are out there. When we do look, we can see that VC funds who invest into crypto, especially into new projects, aren't doing so in any great numbers right now. Typically, they do this in a bull market with returns that are made from the blue chip pumps. So when Bitcoin and Ethereum pump, they take those profits, then they look for other avenues to invest. Right now, those numbers are floundering. We simply aren't there yet. This tells me that we are a ways off from that true, huge altcoin season. Now, of course, a lot of this comes down to labeling. When you want to think of an altcoin season being the very beginning of a bull market, where, essentially, as we've said, you want to get in as early as you can anyway. So the moment you start getting in at the ultra lows, technically that could be labeled the season to get in. I'm going to keep things pretty straightforward for myself in thinking of altcoin season that I'm planning for as the time where we start seeing that mass altcoin price appreciation. And right now, looking at some of the stuff I'm looking at, it doesn't tell me that we're there yet. Now, the last time we saw a big spike on this front when VC funds were investing a lot more heavily into new projects, it was around the beginning of December 2020, where we had our DeFi summer. If we then marry that up with dominance charts and price charts from that last cycle, we can see that this was when we saw BTC starting its upward trajectory. And we saw that profit taken also slightly started taking place. So right now it's all running true to course. It may seem like right now, because Bitcoin is almost at 60K, that we've missed out on everything, right? Especially if you're new to crypto, you weren't around for the last cycle or cycles before. I can see why some coming in may be worried that some of this instant, seemingly instant price appreciation with Bitcoin over the last month or two may lead you to believe that you're late to the game. But we are still just coming out of that consolidation area. If we zoom out, we are kind of just starting the run. Last time around at this stage, BTC did well over a 200, almost 300% move from here in the following 3 months. So while we haven't missed the main show, we are rapidly approaching it. If we apply the fact that we have a downside more institutional money entering the market this time around, we can anticipate these types of things playing out to a much greater extent. Couple that though with the fact that Bitcoin's a lot heavier now. We may have more friction moving with a much more heavy market cap than previous cycles. Even with the larger insurgence of new revenue, I still wouldn't be surprised if we see 150K plus Bitcoin within that time, which sounds kind of crazy that in 3 months' time, we could, 3 or 4 months' time, we could see a huge price appreciation on the Bitcoin front. But it wouldn't be unrealistic, in my opinion, especially knowing the volume that's coming into the market and what's happened in cycles past. Now, when Bitcoin pumps even 10%, and has $1 trillion market cap, it creates essentially another $1 billion within the community that can then flood into other projects. This is where the altcoin season comes from. Now, again, as we have a downside more TradFi, institutional money and interest entering the market, we can expect this new insurgence of money and traders to reflect a much larger wad of cash from taking profits from BTC and Ethereum to be aimed toward altcoins. It's simply what happens. But what does that mean for where we are right now? Especially for us smart money, the folks who are early to the game, who aren't, balls deep into Bitcoin, because we know that other tokens will have much more of an upside for us if we play the game smartly. Now, this isn't an exact science, but we can look for certain things that will tell us what phase we're in. We know that right now institutions have been driving price movement and not retailers. We know that retail interest notoriously drives price movement hugely. So, with some common sense, we can see that the next upcoming stage of retail engagement is also going to pump Bitcoin hard. The next phase of market progression, we want to see media attention. This draws folks in masses, on top, of course, of the continuing growth and adoption of institutional investments, hence why I believe this is going to be a super cycle. We can then look at things like the viewership of YouTube channels, big YouTube channels and crypto website visits that we notice start ticking up, eyeballs that have been drawn from this wider, more mainstream adoption of narrative and pushed to find out more information. This is the kind of the funnel that they go through, right? Which is a pretty big indicator at that point. As soon as we start seeing those numbers ticking up of what retail traction is looking like, then as the market progresses and we start to see outlets like these gaining less and less new subscribers, this is one good indication that everyone has already pretty much gotten in the space and new fresh meat is running out for new players coming into the cycle. Now, finding the balance in the time between mainstream media picking up crypto narratives and then hearing your neighbor talking about Bitcoin and suddenly thinking to yourself, maybe this should be the top and I should start selling, is where the magic is made, right? That's where the most value in your analysis comes into play. If you've been setting and DCAing and investing into projects that you start to see big price movement from, we want the right balance of interest that brings in enthusiasts, the investors, the forward-thinking folks, but before the everyday folks who will ape in to what they're too late to capitalize on. This, again, to summarize a great deal, is probably towards the end of Q1 into Q2 of 2025. And maybe a little bit later, especially now, as I think this cycle, and we can get into detail in this in another video, but I think this cycle will be elongated slightly just because the way that institutional money moves is slightly different for retail. So I think we may even have a chance of prolonging the time in which that true retail engagement comes into play. I just want to make sure we're not missing it out. So we're adhering to the examples that have been set before us in previous cycles, right? But right now, I want to say again, you are early still. And I'm using the word early perhaps a little loosely because folks have been getting in for, all throughout the bear cycle. But for any new folks coming in who haven't been doing that, you still haven't really missed out on the majority of the market. So don't feel like you're too late to start putting money in. This is exactly the time you want to be doing so. In fact, you could even argue that some of the flags indicating what a good risk reward ratio is will probably tell you that now that risk reward ratio is probably more aligned to making a solid investment. You haven't missed anything yet, relatively speaking. But again, you should be making moves. Now, how do we pick the next move? We are, of course, positioning ourselves now into altcoins and new projects that look to have huge potential. As new market sectors come to fruition in what seem to be very exciting ways, that intersection of a bunch of different sectors that we've talked about looks amazing. And our job now is to see what projects are going to show us the mega returns we want to see. Some, if not most, of these new market sector projects haven't even been launched yet, probably. So it's important to stay in the know, stay relevant, and keep learning and stay educated throughout this whole cycle, because it doesn't take much for a new, exciting project to be sandbagged until the market starts to get in hype mode, because they know that people are already excited, and you get a much more successful launch looking at probability rates if you launch in the midst of euphoria. So it's important to keep an ear to the grindstone with a lot of that stuff and already have that market knowledge and foundation that will tell you at the time if it's a good investment or not. And I know this sounds very obvious, but for some of you coming in, some of the new folks, I know it isn't. Now, you've heard me speak on projects that I'm buying into right now. There's even an ETF, an ETH event in Denver next week that I'm going to, talking about AI and some of the upcoming projects that we may be able to get some early access to. We discuss many exciting new areas and projects in our private group, sectors like AI, DePIN, as well as a new, first cycle layer ones and projects that will allow us to capitalize on this exciting and very, very fruitful crypto period that we are in and we are going into. So the link below in the description if you want to join that and make some serious money. But when do we take profits? Now, active traders will always take profits from the highs of certain tokens and ecosystems and apply them to other projects. There's no getting around it. No project is different. So we do have to ensure that we are taking profits along the way. And I will, of course, be looking to keep my community and group up to speed when I think those best times are. But it is important, to stay relative with how the market sentiment and narratives change, to be able to call those shots in the moment if you need to. The halving is about 50 days away, give or take, right? And I want to prepare you that this will likely create a moment of time right after where we see a little retracement. Now, I don't think it's going to be anything substantial in the long run, but at those points in time, it may seem like a sentiment swing and is no doubt going to shake people out of their positions. But I'm telling you now, in advance of when that happens, stay strong, because we're set to explode after that. Again, during the last cycle, the first really big leg up was in that DeFi summer, with many other altcoins also going up. That was around the 1st of December 2020, or at least the start of it, right? It shot up before retracement, and then we reached all-time highs. So just live by that example and understand that as these kind of trader mentalities come to play, they do move the market, but ultimately we can probably adhere to some more solid patterns that were formed in cycles past, and every cycle is different to some extent, but don't let it shake you out is my point. I say this to tell you that we should be anticipating, a similar leg up this season, albeit I think due to my super cycle narrative that I love, being essentially on steroids because of all this new revenue that's coming in. And if we can locate the timing like we saw in DeFi summer, then it's going to help us out a great deal. Right now, anyone holding off for altcoins to fall to 20 to 30% before taking positions, I think you're picking up pennies in front of freight trains at the risk of opportunity cost. We don't know right now how this altcoin season is going to shake out. I do think personally, as I keep saying, we are in for a very wild ride with a lot more attention, a lot more money coming in. We talk about media attention. We talk about the trickle-down effect of how that affects different calibers of buyers and how that money matriculates through the crypto system. You imagine that marketing, now that big institutions are also involved and they have their motivations aligned with pumping those prices to the extreme, marketing budgets are going through the roof. So bear that in mind as well. And I know I'm throwing a lot at you right now. So, maybe you want to go back and rewatch some of this as well. And we'll, of course, go into detail in future videos. But I want to make sure that you are prepared and kind of understand the situation we're in. You haven't missed anything. The proper altcoin season, at least how I think of it, hasn't started yet. So it's still important to keep setting your positions. I'm not going to say that you're still very, very, very early, but you're still very early to make most of the gains. But you need to act fast, obviously, right? You can't let this slip away. Now is the time to start buying. If you're watching this right now, you're still ahead of the curve. Most people from those big marketing campaigns are going to come in once all the institutions have made their money in the blue chips. So we have a little bit of time if we use some common sense. As always, I know this one was a little bit kind of sporadic and all over the place, but I hope some of the messages were drilled home. Please do like and subscribe if you found this useful. If you want to join the private group, all the links are below. I would love to see you as part of our community. I love the way we're growing. I love this, this current landscape that we're going into. I think it's going to make a host of new millionaires and a lot of life-changing wealth for a lot of people starting their crypto journey. I think it's a perfect time to do so. And we'd have to really go some to see another cycle anywhere near how fruitful I think this one is going to be. So stay confident, stay bullish. We are in an extremely, extremely bullish time right now. There's no reason for anyone to be feeling bearish. If anything, just enjoy the fact that we're early. Just enjoy the fact that we should see some monumental price movement right now. Don't push it though. Don't assume that we're already in the midst of the high season. We're not. Hopefully we're not. Can you imagine if we were? That would be awful. That would mean that this cycle has essentially failed and the returns that we've seen so far have literally been maxed out. We're a long way from that. We're not even close to making that call. So however you want to label a altcoin season, a Bitcoin season, a bull market, get a good understanding of the timing that's ahead of us. If, like me, the way you're categorizing this is you are anticipating mania stage, for lack of a better term, where prices reach all-time highs and those returns are at their biggest. We're a long way away from that yet. Again, a long way in crypto doesn't really mean too much, but you're still early enough to start setting your positions right now to reap the majority of the rewards that are come. We're all still waiting for those. So I'm not going to keep blabbing in your ear right now. Again, stay tuned for more info, and I'll try to keep you guys in the loop with the decisions that I'm making. And again, for a bit more of a granular conversation, getting a lot more in the weeds, or even finding out about projects and exciting new things that I'm getting into and my community are getting into ahead of perhaps more of that public acknowledgement, join the private